Skeletor stands out as one of the most iconic villains ever imagined. His skull-like face, distinctive voice, and wild, unpredictable energy all contribute to his legendary status. However, there's an aspect often overlooked. Without his precious Havoc Staff, Skeletor is essentially just an angry skeleton wearing a cape. Would you agree? That staff is central to his power and presence. It's the reason He-Man can't simply approach and defeat him. It's also why the Sorceress regards him with genuine concern. More than that, the staff channels some of the darkest and most chaotic magic in all of Eternia. Yet few stop to question his origin or understand why a ram skull mounted on a staff holds such immense danger. Well, no problem. Today, let's explore together exactly what makes the Havoc Staff so significant. Let's begin. The Havoc Staff is a weapon that chooses who wields it. That statement has all of you surprised. Let me explain. Because we have to start at the basics so that we can break down what the Havoc Staff actually is. Because the lore doesn't really do it justice. On the surface, this is a purple staff with a ram skull on top of it. It's shown up in every single version of Masters of the Universe. Whether it's the original 1983 Filmation cartoon, the 2002 Young Mike Productions reboot, or the Netflix Revelation and Revelation era. Every single one of them has its own toy line, and each toy line had its own staff. In fact, the first Skeletor toys that went on sale in the early 1980s came with the staff and one half of the power sword. So you can tell this staff was not optional. But here's the thing, this Havoc Staff is a conduit for Skeletor's vast powers. This whole conduit business is very interesting to me because in the most recently developed version of the lore, it's stated that the staff actually claims the dark power. Apparently, whoever picks up the Havoc Staff is mutated by the dark magic of Havoc into a monster who's bound to its power. So, in short, this is a trap in a really great aesthetic. And that ram skull actually has importance. While it does look creepy and sends home the message that we're doing some dark magic stuff, if you look into history, you'll see that rams and goats are associated with dark rituals, demonic symbolism, and forbidden magic. Every cult I can think of off the top of my head had a ram skull. The Baphomet figure, the goat of the Sabbath, the idea of unlocking hidden power through a pact, all of this is present right under our eyes, through that one single design choice. And when you make the ram skull our villain's primary weapon, you're making it very obvious what kind of power you're dealing with. The Filmation era and how they dealt with the mystery of the staff. Let's go back to the very beginning of Masters of the Universe. The 1983 Filmation series is where everything begins. This was the show where most people first encountered the Havoc Staff, and the show actually dealt with the staff very nicely. And by very nicely, I mean they were very vague about it. There's no origin episode or flashback about the Havoc Staff. You don't see Skeletor picking up the Havoc Staff for the first time and being all, Grayskull will be mine, or anything. We just see the staff with Skeletor and we just accept it. Like, think about how we get to see why Mum-Ra is Mum-Ra, you know? So this is a creative choice where you just accept the staff as something that comes with Skeletor, which was conscious. And guess what? This choice actually had a big impact on the show back in the day. In the 1980s, when the show aired, the studios actually received a bunch of mail from angry parents because the staff was clearly a sign of Satan. The parents could tell just from that staff that Skeletor is truly diabolical. And this is pretty fair. I mean, you have a skeleton-faced dude who uses a staff with a ram skull to conjure some random dark magic every week. I would be surprised if the parents didn't write letters. But despite all that backlash, the animators didn't back down at all. They kept the staff because that's what made Skeletor work as a villain. But that doesn't mean the Filmation series didn't feed us. In its 130 episode run, there's actually a very detailed picture of what the staff can actually do. And if you make a list of it, you'll see that it simply goes on and on. In this version with the Havoc Staff, Skeletor can fire destructive blasts of mystic energy and create a sleep-inducing mist. He can even spy on He-Man in the game. We've also seen him conjure dimensional gateways, energize inanimate objects, and generally corrupt everything with dark magic. So, as you can tell, this weapon is basically a cannon, a radio, and a door all in one thing, much like those men's shampoos that are like 13 products in one. With the staff, our boy Skeletor is a man who is walking around with a Swiss Army knife of evil. He truly is a one-man army, you know? However, there is a significant detail that this series gave us. In the Filmation universe, we know very evidently that Skeletor was relatively helpless without the Havoc Staff, which means that Skeletor's magical output heavily relied upon the Havoc Staff's own power. And this is important because we know that Skeletor is one of the most feared sorcerers in Eternia, and even he, without the staff, is weaker. This one fact changes every single confrontation between Skeletor and He-Man. See, He-Man, his powers live inside Prince Adam. The powers are only waiting to be activated. Skeletor, on the other hand, does not have powers inside him that are waiting to be activated. At least in the Filmation universe, his powers seem to be largely borrowed from an object that is indestructible. It can quite literally repair itself within seconds if it's damaged, which means it has a will of its own. And since we're on the topic, let's talk about another detail from the Filmation Studios version that you might have missed. So in one of the episodes, Skeletor is affected by the wild magic surges that are caused by the demon Daimon. And guess what? The Havoc Staff automatically turned into a living red serpent. The staff decided to change its shape without even Skeletor's doing. So, who's actually in charge? Is it Skeletor or is it the staff? Those questions were never answered by the Filmation Studios, but that doesn't mean we never got those answers, if you catch my drift. Now, let's move on to the next version. The 2002 series finally answered some questions. In 2002, Young Mike Productions decided to do a reboot, and instead of just retelling the Masters of the Universe story, they actually deepened it. Characters got actual backstories, and the magic introduced in this world, it had rules. Stakes actually felt real, and for the first time in the franchise's history, the Havoc Staff got its own lore. According to the 2002 to 2004 MV Creations comics, the Havoc Staff was an ancient artifact that was in possession of the Faceless One, the Lord of Zalesia. His daughter was Evil Lyn. King Hiss kidnapped Evil Lyn because he wanted to summon Serpos. Now, King Hiss and the Faceless One had a treaty, so the Faceless One was kind of forced to help Hiss and give him the power to bring Serpos, the Snake God. But Hiss couldn't control the Snake God, and he kept attacking everyone around him. The Faceless One couldn't do anything. Keldor, on the other hand, went through time to get the Havoc Staff and basically struck a deal with the Faceless One. He would keep Evil Lyn safe and raise her if he were given the Havoc Staff, and Keldor obviously wanted it for nefarious activities. So, with all of this in mind, get this. The Faceless One is one of the most powerful mystical figures in all of Eternia. He is a major character, and the fact that the Havoc Staff was in his custody tells you that this is a relic with real significance. Something that only serious practitioners of sorcery have kept safeguarded, because it's that dangerous. If you look into Keldor's story, you'll see the deal that he struck with the Faceless One was him twisting a manipulative situation to get what he wanted. And this act of selfishness is almost poetically appropriate, because you can tell from the very first moment, Keldor's relationship with the staff was all about taking things and powers that do not belong to him. The war against Castle Grayskull and the constant scheming to take control of Eternia all have their roots in this first theft. He never broke away from that pattern. The 2002 series also showed that the Havoc Staff functions as a magical regulator. It allows Skeletor to channel and direct chaotic energy that would be too volatile or unstable for precision spellcasting, because, surprise, surprise, Keldor actually had genuine magical ability even before the staff. But with the staff, he is elevated to a different level. With the staff, he is a force to be reckoned with, and the show treats this power change very interestingly. Animators used Skeletor's costume choices as a visual cue whenever things were about to be serious. When Skeletor had his cape on and staff raised, we all knew that something big was about to happen. When he didn't have those, you knew that this confrontation was going to be more physical. I have to give the animators credit where it's due. That's really elegant. In my eyes, the Keldor to Skeletor transformation is very pivotal to this continuity. When acid splashed across his face during the assault on the Hall of Wisdom, he was brought to Hordak's sanctuary by Evil Lyn. Hordak stripped the damaged flesh from his skull entirely, and this transformation completed what stealing the Havoc Staff had begun. And in another continuity, Hordak basically merged Keldor with Demo Man, this evil spirit of Despondos that drove Keldor mad. Either way, Keldor was gone and Skeletor stood in his place. His life was completely changed, and there was nothing Keldor could do about it. The comics interpretation and the big reveal. Now we come to 2024. Dark Horse Comics published the first issue of Masters of the Universe Revolution, written by Tim Sheridan, and in the opening pages of the comic, you see where the staff came from. Like, literally its origin. The issue opens with Eternia's origin, where we learn that there were two primordial forces, Zor and Ka. who nearly destroyed the universe. While that was happening, a third force, resembling a ram, came into being. The ram, known as Havoc, was there to balance the forces out. He brought equilibrium to a universe that was on the brink of total destruction. But things did not go out like that. Instead of warmth, we got stagnation and corruption. The stillness rots Havoc's energy, and it becomes a force for chaos and disorder, even though that's not how it started out in the first place. It's like in the absence of the war that was his purpose, Havoc lost his mind, and the staff with the ram skull started carrying all that history. Every spell that Skeletor fires from it, or every portal he opens using the staff, uses Havoc, a god's powers. But wait, the comic actually gets really interesting. In the Masters of the Universe Revolution, first issue, Hordak enters the Fright Zone, where he starts seeing this mysterious coven dwelling there. Shadow Weaver, yes, the one who became She-Ra's formidable opponent, gave Hordak a ram-headed staff known as Havoc. She tells Hordak that he can wield the staff, but only if it's in the hands of another, someone who was born in its fires. And Hordak starts looking for someone who matches all those criteria. And the person he finds who fits all of the bills is none other than Keldor, the future Skeletor. So, since Hordak can't use the staff, he seeks out Keldor, which changes the dynamic between the two completely different from the original story. So of course, it makes a lot more sense when you see Hordak ambushing Keldor. Everything that Keldor went through under Hordak's mentorship was motivated by Hordak's resentment over the weapon that he desperately wanted but could never hold. Keldor was just a tool, and his mentorship was a farce. He was a target for every frustration that Hordak felt about his own limitations. And through Hordak, the staff successfully managed to corrupt Keldor physically. So you could say that Skeletor was made systematically into the man he is now. And eventually, when Skeletor was cyberized and damaged by the motherboard, he found out that he was Randor's half-brother, transformed by the Havoc Staff. And everything Hordak told him about Keldor being an extra-dimensional demon was a lie. Everything he knew about himself was a lie that was built by the man who was using him as a key to a locked door.
Let this be our final battle.
Revelation and Revolution, how the Netflix adaptation changed the staff. So, the Filmation era kept the Havoc staff pretty simple, right? Then the 2002 series and the Revolution comic gave it history and tragedy. But then, you've got the Netflix era, spanning Masters of the Universe Revelation in 2021 and Masters of the Universe Revolution in 2024. In these two series, the staff went from kinda important to being the central part of the story. And here's the thing, I never had a lot of faith in Netflix. I've seen Netflix ruin quite a few of my favorite series. But then I saw the way they dealt with Masters of the Universe, and it was genuinely interesting. Let's start with Revelation. In this series, the Havoc Staff is the ancient relic of Havoc, who is one of the three deities who created Eternia. I know, you have questions. Let me tell you what went down. So, remember Zor and Ka? Yeah, so they were fighting, and Havoc, like in the comics, joined them and balanced them out and added entropy between the dynamics because peace was apparently getting a bit boring for them. So, they started fighting, and eventually they realized that they were dependent on each other. So together, the three created Eternia, this paradise where all the souls of devotees and heroes could find eternal rest. 3 towers were built as repositories for power and the knowledge of the 3 deities. Castle Grayskull is Zor's tower for reference. Ka and Havoc also had their own towers, but the followers abused the powers granted to them a lot, which eventually caused a catastrophic cataclysm. And of course, eventually both towers fell. Grayskull remained, while Ka's staff and Havoc's staff were lost until the latter ended up in Skeletor's hands. So, whenever you see Skeletor on screen, you know that he's using the powers of a fallen god. And I love the way Revolution uses the staff brilliantly in the action sequences. In the opening episode, you see Skeletor scrape the ram skull on the floor like he's lighting a match, only to use it to attack He-Man with a fireball. I love how the visuals make it seem like the staff is enjoying attacking He-Man like that. And at one point, we see Skeletor slam the staff on the floor of Grayskull, and the sections of the floor peel back to reveal this hidden path to the Orb of Power. And then, in a moment that resets the entire franchise, Skeletor strikes the Orb of Power directly and cracks it open. He releases the magic that created Eternia and the universe itself, almost ending all existence in a single swing. And the aftermath of those events sets up for the events that we follow in Revelation. All the magic is dying from Eternia, and now the staff that is reduced to just its skull was picked up by Evil Lyn, who vanished into a ripple of magic within. And the ram skull survives it all in the hands of Evil Lyn, who disguised herself as this old woman. She used the skull as a goblet and only revealed its true form to the sorceress to drive home the fact that Evil Lyn held the last bit of magic in her hand. This catastrophically destructive relic from Eternian history is now repurposed as a vessel for healing. Say what you want, but that tonal flip is hella entertaining. And then we get Revolution. Here we learn that Skeletor has always been Keldor. He was twisted by the corruptive influence of Havoc's staff. So, over the years, he mutated into a monster bound to its powers. And this is no longer just a theory, because in the show, we see Teela briefly pick up the staff to combine it with the other two god staves, and there is an immediate transformation in her. Even though Teela is at the sorceress's level with her magical training, she almost lost herself to the staff. But this mixing of all three staves is the entire thematic arc of the Netflix era. The three forces of Eternia were finally unified in a single person, and Teela, who was wielding all three powers, becomes the Tri-Sorceress. She restored Preternia, and the staff that caused so much havoc eventually became the one to heal and to make everything right again. The war that had been going on for centuries finally concludes when He-Man purges the Havoc magic from Keldor's soul, and this leaves the latter's mortal shell behind. Finally, he had to accept he wasn't strong enough to beat his nephew, and that's the best ending we could have given that poor man anyway. Overall, I would say if you haven't watched the Netflix series, you really should, because they did a wonderful job with it. What is the full extent of the Havoc Staff's power? I mean, we all know to an extent what the staff can do, right? But given that every single person has given a different twist to the staff, I think it would be apt to say that this is the most varied of any single weapon in animated history. So let's go through the powers one by one. First and foremost, we have raw destructive energy projection. We all know it, we've all seen it. The staff can literally send out blasts that can make He-Man take a step back. And from the looks of it, these energy beams can quite literally do everything that Skeletor needed them to do at any given moment. When his physical form was destroyed, he and the beam went inside Evil Lyn's wand. And when it was time, Skeletor materialized out of nowhere with his staff to prevent Prince Adam from changing into He-Man. So, from the looks of it, just like you can't destroy energy, you cannot destroy the staff. Other than this kind of ability, the staff is basically an amplifier for spells. Skeletor is very well known across Eternia as the most powerful and most evil spellcaster. In the Filmation era, we had an idea of how important the staff can be when it comes to spellcasting. Then, during the Revelation era, we realized that the staff also amplifies the teleportation, dimensional access, transformation, and projection all throughout. Speaking of which, we have to talk about the dimensional abilities. They're the most creative power of the staff. The staff can open portals, go to other realms, and literally channel forbidden energies from those worlds that are beyond Eternia completely. But then, in Revelation, we see Skeletor take this to a whole new level. He opens literally 2 portals of different sizes, right? And when he sticks his hand into the smaller one, a giant arm comes out of the larger portal and starts attacking He-Man. How cool is that? The way the dimensional geometry is getting twisted is really interesting. You have to give Skeletor his props for being creative at least. Then in the Filmation era, the crystal ball that's set within the Ram Skull allows for scrying abilities. Using that, Skeletor can observe enemies from a distance, so a lot of surveillance. But wait, there's more. The staff can command supernatural entities and animated objects with dark magic, and sometimes you can see the staff literally swallow magic attacks or redirect them instead of just firing attacks out from the staff. And because of this, eventually with the help of the Havoc Staff, Skeletor becomes this cosmic terror. So, no matter which little aspect of the staff you're considering, you'll see that there is some sort of corruption happening through and through. As the franchise develops, you can see that the power of the staff works with the identity of the caster. The staff is not limitless. With how I've been talking about the staff, I don't blame you at all if you feel like the staff has no weaknesses. But the staff does have weaknesses, and those are very meaningful. For example, the most important limitation is the dependency itself. Take away the staff, and suddenly Skeletor is at a disadvantage. Another weakness worth mentioning is that the staff's powers can be matched. The Sorceress, who uses Grayskull's power, can match and even sometimes overcome the powers of the staff. In the Netflix era, we saw how the primordial staves of Zor, Ka, and Havoc are all equally powered. So Teela needed all 3 to win. Defeating Havoc by itself is not an easy task. But when you have Zor and Ka's power, you can control Havoc and use it for good. But in my eyes, the limitation of the staff that really left a mark on me is the result of the fight between He-Man and Skeletor. Okay, so we all know that He-Man purged Havoc and Skeletor from Keldor's soul at the climax of the fight. And when that happens, Keldor sighs in relief because he's finally out of the grasp of Havoc's magic, right? Now, this is important to me because from the looks of it, Despite having the staff for so long, there are no remnants of the power in Keldor. Everything is just gone. It's a limitation, yes, but it's also a consequence. The Havoc Staff versus the Power Sword. Which one is better? I know. You've been wondering this question from the moment this video started, and that's why I saved it for last. You cannot understand what the Havoc Staff means unless you put it next to the Power Sword, because these objects are literally the backbone of the Masters of the Universe franchise. On one hand, we have the Power Sword. It carries the power of Grayskull. You have order, balance, strength, heroism, and this utmost urge to choose responsibility associated with this. He-Man, whenever he pulls out the Power Sword, he's showing up for a duty to take care of everyone around him and make sure everyone is safe. On the other hand, we have the Havoc Staff. This is a relic that carries the energy of a god of chaos. It burns everything in its way. It claims whatever it touches. So whenever Skeletor uses it, he's demanding something, be it attention, be it the power of Grayskull, or be it the whole of Eternia. Skeletor is using the Havoc Staff for his own individual ambition. This contrast is present in every Masters of the Universe show that you will watch or comic you will read. From 1983 until the Revolution comic came out. In that comic, we saw the true power is actually the power of friendship. I know, it's so cringy, but it's true. He-Man wins because he has people supporting him. Skeletor has no one. The staff is the only source of power he has, and that's why when you take the staff away, Skeletor falls. But if you take the Power Sword away, He-Man doesn't. So, which one is better? If you want damage, go for the Havoc Staff, though you might have to pay with your whole life for that. If you want something creative, something to grow with, go for the Power Sword, because it doesn't matter who wields it. It matters what you're using the sword for. In my opinion, the Havoc Staff is one of the best villain weapons in the history of animated storytelling. It's pretty powerful, but what makes it so awesome in my eyes is how you can tell what its wielder is just by looking at it. You look at the staff and you understand Skeletor. When I was a kid, I thought the Havoc Staff was this cool, creepy accessory. But now, after I've consumed every piece of Masters of the Universe media, I gotta admit, this staff was worth the 40 years of waiting. I love how developed the lore of this staff has been, and I hope you enjoy watching this video as much as I enjoyed making. Let us know in the comments if you guys want us to cover the primordial gods or the mythology of Castle Grayskull, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Also, if you enjoyed watching this video, please do hit that like and share button, and don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell icon to receive more interesting videos regularly in your feed. I'll see you in the next one.